garages everywhere. Mechanics meet, Farkles are wrenched, rides are planned, stories are told, and dreams are hatched. This is our garage. Welcome to Farkle Garage. I'm Kim Rock. Over here, the man whose seat needs no padding, Clive Iron Butt Brown, the princess who wears motorcycle boots, riding instructor Dar Duncan, and the man racing through retirement, motorcycle Hall of Famer Steve Drain. And over my shoulder, our very own Farkle Garage band. On today's show, we're talking saddle time. The gang rips around the South Island Loop. Clive and Paul Iron Butt it to Idaho to visit Klim headquarters. Dar meets some Postie bikers, and Steve dusts off his racing gear. All this and more on this episode of Farkle Garage. On Vancouver Island, we're lucky to be able to ride year-round. But if you don't have the time or the rawhide to ride Clive's Van Isle Saddle Source 1600K, you can certainly do our favorite day ride around the South Island Loop.
The Pacific Marine Circle Route, the Loop. 260 kilometers, 160 miles of beautiful British Columbia.
It's the essence of riding Vancouver Island. It's the West Coast.
From the community of Souk, the road twists its way along the wild shores of the Strait of Juan de Fuca.
First place I went when I got my first road motorcycle was out the Souk Road, and after that, at least every weekend.
The island is part of Canada's rainforest, but the summer months are often sunny and slightly cooler than the mainland. We stop a moment to drink in the salt and seaweed and gaze across to the U.S. and Washington's Olympic Mountains.
I could do this ride 10,000 times and I could never be bored.
The Loop takes about 4.5 hours to ride, but with a dozen rugged beaches, perfect for picnics, a stroll, or quiet contemplation, you could easily make a day of it.
There's just magic in the air. It's amazing. It's almost like it feeds your soul.
Forests and babbling brooks and twisty roads. It doesn't get better on the island.
2 hours from Victoria, we stop for a bite at the Port Renfrew pub. The San Juan Valley is home to the Pachidat First Nation, the people of the seafoam. Spanish explorers mapped these shores in 1790. Europeans began settling here in 1859. Before rails and roads, supplies came by ship. Unfortunately, storms and rocky shores sank thousands of them. Hundreds of people perished. The West Coast became known as a graveyard of the Pacific. In 1907, a life-saving trail was established to help shipwreck survivors. Today, the grueling West Coast Trail is hiked by backpackers from around the world. From Port Renfrew, the road winds north, inland through active logging areas. The hour-long trip to the town of Lake Cowichan is a wild and somewhat bumpy ride with narrow sections, switchbacks, and a few tight corners, before turning south again for Victoria. Just what you'd expect from beautiful BC.
Wind therapy.
Puts you in a different frame of mind.
And although these guys have done the Loop hundreds of times,
Never really get tired of it.
that freedom of riding on two wheels.
You had the rumble of Harleys and the smooth sound of the Hondas running, but where was the sound of the duck?
I'm so bummed that I missed that ride. Sometimes life gets in the way. Besides, you wouldn't have been able to keep up anyways. Talking about long rides, Dar and I caught up with a couple of riders from down under. There's scoots and exercise in patience. These Aussies are riding Postie bikes. Have a look.
Imagine trading your comfy Goldwing or Electric Glide for one of these.
Your bum does get sore.
But this Australian couple say they found the perfect ride to see the sights.
Mabel,
She's my only one.
Mabel and Rosie are Postie Bikes.
Super tough, super reliable.
Modified Honda CT110s.
Travel slower, travel longer, travel cheaper.
The clutchless 4-speeds were used by Australia's mail carriers, or posties. These gals have been refitted with 125cc engines.
That's to help us get up your big mountains here.
Vancouver Island became the first leg of their 5-year odyssey.
All the way back home to Australia via every other country we can.
They carry only what they need.
Every gram counts on a little bike.
2 shirts, 2 pairs of pants and underwear and a couple of jumpers, and then I just chucked everything else.
Maximum cruising speed is just 70 kilometers an hour.
Obviously we travel a lot slower than other people do, and we try not to hold them up. Sometimes there's nowhere to get off the road, but we do our best.
So they ride the roads less traveled.
We get to go through the little towns and meet people. It's a good thing.
And people are really interested in little bikes like this, so we've always found we've had lots of people to talk to every time we stop.
And that's the reason for the journey.
To meet people and to experience other cultures.
You only get one real good shot at this life.
It's really about the journey rather than the destination.
And their journey through Canada?
From the moment we got here, the people have been incredible.
Canadians are just so welcoming and friendly, and we talk to people everywhere we go.
A random guy come up and paid for our first tank of fuel, and that was our introduction.
The couple will camp their way across the Americas before heading to Africa, Europe, Asia, and finally back to Albany, Australia.
Well, if you see us, come and say hello.
If you miss them, follow their progress on their blog, so you can keep your big cruisers. This couple's going postie.
I wouldn't give these things up for the world.
Next, we go from postie bikers to continental drifters. Brian and Deja Domingues stopped by to relive their 2-year odyssey around South America. For Deja, the journey was more of an awakening. She learned that home looks different from the seat of a bike. We'll be right back. Joining us in the garage, a couple who know a bit about long-distance riding. Brian and Deja Domingues spent 26 months behind bars riding South America. Thanks for joining us. 2 years.
2 years. Thanks for having us.
You know, we had a great adventure. We started in 2010 and went till 2012. We took off from Vancouver Island and went north to Alaska, the Yukon, stayed north in Canada out to Newfoundland, worked our way down to Argentina, Mendoza. We got waylaid there in the wineries. Turned around and headed north again, stranded actually in Cuba for 5 months, that's a bit of a story. Cuba's complicated. Rescued by a Mexican ferry, ended up back in Mexico, and then worked our way back up into Vancouver.
Was there ever a point where you were like, enough, I just want to go home?
There were many times, but why not experience this amazing opportunity that we had to travel without limits of time? Back in 2006, we had a bad accident in the United States, and that really helped us realize that what we had planned for life, which meant really travel on our motorcycles as much as we could, that it had to be emphasized and take the time to do it. And we had that opportunity, so why not experience everything that we experienced without really wanting to go home? There were times when we wanted to go home just because home is home.
Where did you find the time and the money to do a trip like this?
Once we decided that we were going to take off for 2 years, you know, we sold all our stuff and we rented out our house and we took off. It cost us, at the end of the day, it cost us $50 a day for absolutely everything. Wow. We tented and cooked and we stayed with people. We also had a theme where we did research on operational improvements, which put us into areas that people don't normally go, and in contact with local people, business owners. And so we spent a lot of time with people, locals in different countries. And so so it really didn't cost very much, and about 20% of the cost ended up being my accident in Peru.
Really? So Deja, you're originally from Mexico, so you go back to Mexico riding a motorcycle. Give you a different perspective on your home country?
Totally. I was made in Mexico, I always say, but I am truly Canadian, although I'm not still 100% polite. But I hated Mexico, and that is why I came to Canada, because I could not stand my own country. I was unhappy, and when I went back to Mexico, I noticed that nothing had changed. The country continued to be the same, the people continued to be the same, the corruption was the same, but I had changed, and I had an opportunity to either enjoy the road or hate it. And I chose to enjoy it. I chose to meet people and give myself an opportunity to see the good in Mexico. And I found a lot of good as we travel. Good people, good places, good food, good roads. So I enjoyed it, and now I am happier going back to Mexico.
Oh, wow, that's great.
I was told that you experienced a wild dog attack in Peru. Is that true? Like, can you tell us about that?
Sure. So, oddly enough, I'm the senior rider here, but I'm the one that crashes all the time. Okay. And we were in the mountains of Peru, near a city near Juarez. Anyways, very windy, and there was lots of dogs, lots of wild dogs. We probably passed 100 dogs in 15 kilometers. And I was only doing about 20 kilometers per hour, and a pack of dogs came out and just simply charged the bike and knocked me and the bike over. I broke both my shoulders, my right wrist, right leg, lost a lot of tendons. I have no tendons left.
Unreal.
That wasn't the worst day of the trip. No. It was an experience.
Best day either, though.
But I'll tell you something funny is that I'm lying on the ground, broken into pieces, and all I can hear is Deja chasing the dogs off me, and then screaming and yelling at some of the locals that were around. So she saved me a couple times already.
We're like dog biscuits, eh?
Yeah, I wouldn't have stood a chance, but she pulled up
Maybe
the
next
rear.
time let Deja lead.
Yes.
You must have had a whole pile of experiences.
We have a lot of stories, a lot of experience. Yeah.
We wanted to have more time to experience riding, but also we wanted to learn how to live with less, how to come across people and learn about people and learn about places and enjoy food. Food is something that rides us anywhere, and why not?
Thanks, guys. Coming up, Paul and Clive go on their own ride of discovery and notch a couple more Iron Butt rides along the way of Idaho to visit Klim headquarters, the technical riding gear specialists. And riding for a reason, special guest motorcycle journalist and adventurer Neale Bayly drops by. We'll be right back.
Rigby, Idaho, Klim headquarters.
Every time you make a mistake, you have a learning opportunity. We call it our tuition.
The technical riding gear company that began with 2 kids in a garage learning to make outdoor clothing better.
When we first started, we thought we knew it all, but it's taken a little bit of time.
Nearly 25 years, this growing warehouse and R&D facility, proof that tuition pays off.
We have people that have a passion for what they do.
Over 110 employees globally.
We want to give people a better riding experience.
Safety and comfort are paramount.
So many people here are riders. We do build it for the customer, but a lot of times, we are the customer.
Their mantra?
Function before fashion, so it has to work.
They build for the worst.
We expect you to get into an accident at some point.
Our customers trust us that we're going to do the work ahead of time to make sure that they're going to be as safe as possible in enjoying the world.
That's cold.
That work is done right here at Klim HQ.
That hand was painfully cold. This one was warm.
We learned about waterproof, breathable fabrics.
You just described conductivity loss.
That thread is thrilling.
Oh, yeah, we get all kinds of excited about thread.
If we go any harder than that, I'll be cutting myself.
Yeah. Wow. That's what's holding the product together. So we are a little bit fanatical when it comes to thread.
We met the Kevlar Kid, who loves poring over fabric magazines and crash reports.
To understand what apparel needs to do, it's important to understand what happens in an accident.
Going 80 miles an hour, and he wrecked. And you can see we actually wore through the first layer of armor core here on the pocket, but nothing went all the way through. We made this from the ground up. It's terrible. But the reality is, that's the difference between nylon 6.6 and a polyester.
Now that is a really really sharp knife.
This material is from Scholler. It's a one of a kind. I have never found anything as durable as this is from a tear and tensile and abrasion. Slowly.
And inside their jacket, no foam here. Armor made from D3O.
It's a shape change material, so when it gets hit, it becomes rigid. And so the impact, instead of going through it, goes out and then down.
Fashion with function, created by riders.
It's amazing, you know, these jackets, when you see this, it just makes you proud that, hey, we picked the right materials, we did all the right testing, but then in the real world, this actually saves somebody. Somebody's able to go home that night.
We take best ingredients we can find and put them together to make the best possible product we can.
And they do this, they say, by talking to us, the user.
Listening to forums and going to dealerships and going on campouts with customers and really experiencing the product.
Because, Paul says, they want to get it right.
That's what we build product for, is those once-in-a-lifetime experiences. For those guys that are going all the way around the world multiple times, or that guy that's going to do a 2-week trip with some buddies that this is their one vacation for the year and everything has to work.
Joining us in the garage, the man who was born to ride, visiting from Charlotte, North Carolina, motorcycle journalist, philanthropist, and host of MAP TV's Neale Bayly Rides.
I'm Neale Bayly, motorcycle journalist and philanthropic adventure traveler. I'm about to take 3 average riders on the journey of a lifetime. We'll ride 8 days across the South American country of Peru.
It's freaking creepy out here.
Our mission? To visit an orphanage for abandoned children in the remote southeastern desert.
Wow, you're really living the dream. Take us to the beginning.
Well, Kim, I'd been riding motorcycles for about 20 years. I'd been scratching around all over the world, and I was down in southern Spain one time, sitting there looking at the lights of northern Africa, and I thought, do I continue, do I go back to the States and figure out a way to get paid to do this? Because I was kind of like tired of constantly washing up broke, having the best stories in the bar, best pictures, but no money. So I said, hey, you know, someone needs to pay me to do this. I've been doing it a long time. So I went back to the States, did a charity ride in India in the late 1990s, created my first magazine story. Dad started me writing for magazines. That led to doing television. I went from producing television to hosting television to creating my own television show. And really, in a nutshell, it was kind of from that idea, hey, someone needs to pay me to do this. And I think being unemployable, no one's going to hire me. I mean, what are you going to do? Say, yeah, what have you been doing lately? Well, I rode around Australia, rode around Europe. Yeah. I like motorcycles. I like getting up around 10 o'clock in the morning. I mean, it's not a great resume potential. So that's really how I created, and that's how we're here today.
So Neale, your first show was tripping on 2 wheels. You've been tripping around Vancouver Island for the last week or so, I understand.
I have.
What's your impressions?
It's amazing. I just need to make a point. The tourist board aren't paying me to say this, by the way. This is actually...
It truly is an amazing place.
It's just
to ride
an amazing place. I mean, I've ridden a lot of places around the world, and from the minute I got here, I mean, it's spectacular. Yeah. And everywhere you go, people are friendly, and it's just really beautiful here.
Well, thank you. We love it here.
Yeah. Hey, so what is Neale Bayly's Ride?
Neale Bayly Rides, towards the end of the 2000s, I was saying I was doing a lot of magazine and print work, traveling the world, testing motorcycles. You know, my job was to go, BMW brings his bike out, get on it, go ride it, tell people about it. And that sort of developed into the television, the tripping on 2 wheels. And at the same time, I started a 501c3 foundation to care for abandoned kids in Peru. So I found myself as one of these sort of crossroads in life. I really loved tripping on 2 wheels. We were riding bikes, traveling the world, bringing great stuff to the media, great stories. And I was doing this charity work. Neither of them were as successful as I wanted them to be. And then I woke up one morning and had the brainwave, hey, let's stick them together. So Neale Bayly Rides is about riding motorcycles, doing the stuff we love to do, but we sort of add this charitable component to the end of it. So there's a sort of a purpose for what we're doing. And that, in a nutshell, is how I created Neale Bayly Rides.
Tell us about the mission of all of this motorcycle madness. Like, what is it that you're doing with this?
I've been doing journalism, doing TV. I've been a traveler. I've been traveling since I was a kid, from hitchhiking around the world to riding motorcycles. And I think that's great. I mean, I love the world. I love all that it has to bring. I think, you get a much more open mind when you travel, and it's a more rewarding life. But I've also had this deep-seated component for charity work since we were kids. I mean, we had a TV show when we were kids that used to raise money, and we were always raising money for Africa and places of need. So I think what it's done in my adult life is allowed me to use my tools as a storyteller to really use what I do for a job to raise money for the kids. I mean, if I was maybe a carpenter, I'd be building houses and selling them off for the kids. I'm just a storyteller with motorcycles, so I can do that to raise money for children. So the mission always exists to raise money, raise awareness. We're building homes in Africa. We're doing a community kitchen this year in South Africa. We've done numerous projects in our foundation in Peru. And obviously we would just want to keep continuing this. And I sort of, the spearhead of it I'm the one that's kind of in the spotlight. So that's my job.
So traveling to all of these different countries, you see all the poverty and the want of kids, and this just allows you to do that.
Yeah, and this is just my tools. I mean, I'm a motorcycle photojournalist, TV guy, so I use my tools to tell the story of these kids to raise money. Other people use their tools.
Thanks, Neale. See you on the road and on TV. Up next, we take a closer look into the life of Steve Drain now that he's retired. Stay with us.
When some retire, they look for a rocking chair. Steve Drain says he won't be rocking. He'll be too busy racing.
30 years since I've been on a racetrack.
But like his 71 Honda CB500.
Man, this bike was built before half these guys were born,
At age 60, he's the first to admit he's getting a bit long in the tooth.
I know that I'm not 30 anymore. A couple of retirees out on the racetrack.
Testing the limits of aging machine and man. Vintage road racing on the Westwood Motorcycle Racing Club track in Mission, BC.
It's gonna be a really good hobby.
To handle road racing, the bike sports custom suspension and brakes. The modified engine fitted with twin carbs. It's fast, but
the bike is not like one of these super bikes that the young guys drive with 200 horsepower or anything like that. The bike and I are matched.
Although the riders mostly stock.
Hardest part about this whole race thing was getting a leather suit on.
Motorcycles, his lifelong passion and his career until he turned 60 and retired.
I enjoyed myself so much back in the days when I was racing in 83, 84, 85, and 6.
Steve owned Victoria's Harley-Davidson dealership for 40 years, but the very thing he loved kept this Canadian Motorcycle Hall of Famer from doing what he loved. Wrenching and retail, forcing him to the sidelines.
To run my business. Simple as that. I've dreamt about getting back on the track ever since that day, and here we are. I vowed before I sold my business that when I retired that I would get on the track somehow with my old friend Richard here. We've been riding together since we were young guys, and it was a great feeling. A couple old friends just having at it,
Steve's on the right track. Studies show that men who shared skills like motorcycle mechanics and racing were less likely to become depressed in retirement. Studies in the UK suggest that the best way to stay healthy in retirement is to actually keep working.
It's an interesting thing when you return to a sport that you love after such a big absence, and all the little things, like not only being out on the track, but just sitting around with the guys, working on bikes, bench racing, and going over some of the good times we had together. I gotta tell you, man, it's therapeutic.
But this isn't lawn bowling or fly tying. There's real risk involved.
If I don't feel it's in me, I won't do it.
Steve says he knows his limits, and besides,
I ain't setting any records, but it feels good to be out there.
To race again, Steve needed to recertify. He completed the Westwood Novice Race Club course, allowing him to race on other tracks. He plans to race his way across North America after a few more local runs.
Started to come back, about 10 or 12 laps in, I could just sort of feel it. I started to dream about the old days,
Yes, this vintage bike and rider are a perfect match. Steve, confident in his abilities. The bike,
it's stretched to the limit. So it's up to the rider to make sure that you can finish the race.
He says he'll keep racing until he can't.
Or you lose your nerve.
A radical retirement? Maybe. But this lifelong biker says he wouldn't have it any other way.
No rocking chairs for this guy.
Thanks for joining us in the garage. If you got a story or know someone who does, send us an email. Share it with us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter and we'll share it with the world. We hope you enjoyed hanging out with us at Farkle Garage. Now get out and ride. And remember, sometimes you find yourself in the middle of nowhere, and sometimes in the middle of nowhere, you find yourself. Later, yes.
Riding gear provided by Klim. Technical riding gear.
Robbers on the road, wind in my face, riding down the highway. Heaven is a place I'm rolling on.